thing down since it looks like a sit down.
Stand up.
We'll make it lower, relax this way, huh? The camera looks so far off from here, but that's okay. I don't need to have it on me. It's a one camera shot.
Are you going to be speaking?
No.
Okay, just wanted to check.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I see we have members of press here. We have the mayor of Athensville, Roger, our consultant, Chris Spiel, our county commissioner, Jennifer Cochran, our city council member, and myself. And we're doing the kickoff of our RFP, request for proposal for the Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council. What we've got is we're trying to put together an aggregation. We put a proposal out. I'll leave it to the others to give us the nuts and bolts on that. But the main thrust of this is so we can pool and aggregate our buying power within the county and the city and villages, hopefully more villages as time goes on. The concept there is as you aggregate buyers or clients or customers, you increase your buying power and therefore you get a better deal. The main thrust of us of this aggregation and SOPEC is to reduce our costs for buying and supplying electricity. After that, there are other issues we'd like to see, which I'll leave to Chris, who's more enthusiastic about it. Not that I'm not enthusiastic, but again, the primary is to reduce the cost for the customer, ultimately our citizens and our residences. The other parts, of course, would be, again, I could go through all five, but I'll let you guys do that. I'll start with Chris then at this point. But again, the point is to do this and get a buying club, so to speak.
Yeah, and some of our other goals are if we can take our energy dollars that right now are just leaving our community, and we can take some of those dollars and redirect them in projects right here in Athens County, we're going to help, basically kind of like what we've done with our local food movement. We're going to be able to keep our dollars local and increase our capacity to produce our own energy, which I think has longer-term positive implications as well as short-term price potential savings. And I'm really excited about the energy efficiency component. The best way to save people money on their electric bills, I believe, is eliminating their need for electric. And right now, 52% of our energy that's being generated in this country is being wasted through inefficiency. And so if through our RFP we can attract innovative ways to implement these kind of strategies of energy efficiency and then reinvestment of our energy dollars in local projects, I think I'm really glad that we've come this far. I also want to thank Roger Wilkins for stepping up to the plate and really working hard with John Hazley here of the prosecutor's office. And I think this RFP has been thoughtfully researched and developed, and soon enough we'll hear what where the rubber meets the road, so to say. So, Roger.
Well, in putting together this RFP, we put out an invitation to suppliers of electrical energy and energy services, inviting them to provide us with reasonably priced energy, but also to participate in energy efficiency programs, to create energy efficiency programs and local generation programs, so that we can use this as part of an overall economic development strategy that will both generate jobs, create more capacity for local creation of electrical power here, and bring us reasonably priced energy. And we've gotten some responses back to a draft RFP that we put out, some very intelligent and responsive comments that helped us fine-tune the RFP. So based on that, we anticipate a good response to this final RFP, which we just released this week, and we'll be getting responses soon, I'm sure.
Anything, Gary? No?
Well, the village of Amesville is interested for a number of reasons. One of the issues in a small rural community that was brought home by the derecho recently is just the unpredictability of the system. We were down for 9 days in the village without electric 2 years ago. That was a big problem, and so an ailing infrastructure and everything, we need to save money for a community like ours to reinvest in generation and conservation and various other projects. Amesville has just been accepted by AEP as a pilot community for a program they're doing called Community Energy Savers, where they work directly with the community to reach out to local residents to save energy through the low-hanging fruit, which is appliance rebates or appliance recycling, home energy audits, and when you engage in a home energy audit, they'll send you fluorescent light bulbs and low-flow shower heads and all this stuff for free. So you would think an energy company would want to generate more electricity, but it is to their advantage to get residents and businesses to actually save. So there's more capacity within the system. So we're dealing with that right now. We've also been trying to get solar on the village building for a number of years, but the financing, the PPA that Athens did at the community center, those are not as prevalent as they once were, and they're looking for really high volume kilowatt systems. And so as a small community, we're looking at various angles, how to engage in this, and the aggregation is just one more thing that would help us as a village.
Part of the aggregation point is to build a local capacity and resiliency. I'm hoping that we'll be nimble enough. We're going to learn grassroots. We'll not be stuck in assumptions of some of the bigger corporations and projects that are out there. The trend is to make our civilization more efficient when possible. I mean, our batteries on our cell phones last longer. The energy required for various circuitry is down. That's the trend, is to use less energy in general, but not so much even use less, but more efficiently, I think, is what we're looking at, we're striving for. And again, our county has 3 to 4, 5 solar panel companies out there. If we can actually build up our local capacity, that'd be nice, but at the same time, we're not wedded to that. Again, the first thing is customer service for our voters. The second thing is to be innovative. So we've packaged in the RFP a challenge to be creative, to think outside the box and see where we want to go. So we'll see what comes back at us. The deadlines, I think, is you'll find on the fact sheet there. We put out the RFP. Initial intent to propose is due 28th of this month. We'll have a pre-proposal conference August 4th. Be at this building, probably 3rd floor, City Council chambers, depending on our response. And we'll have a dialogue with some of the people who would like to supply us energy. When you think about it, we always talk about conserving energy and there's a limit of it, but the other side of it is the unlimited portion of our creative energies, the creative mind that we have, the things that we can do that will make this work much better. That's totally unlimited. What we can do with our knowledge and our cooperation is more than is a synergistic type structure there. It doesn't run out. And let's hope we end up with a good solution here. And again, part of the point of having this press conference is to let everybody know that we're in progress. We started this last November, or before last November, putting it to the ballot. We have other villages who want to be involved. I like the way it's growing, not too fast, not too slow. We don't really want to just have it sprout and head, but weak in center. So, shoot, it sound like Chancey Gardner. Sorry. Okay. Council is with us on this point. Councilmember Cochran is participating because she has a high interest in this, and there'll always be the idea of the more the merrier at this point. Okay. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I think the one thing that I would add at this point is that aside from our goals of achieving energy savings and cost savings for our consumers, as well as increased energy efficiency, is that we would really like to serve as advocates. We're able to serve as advocates for our citizens through an aggregation program. We are constantly receiving offers from energy companies in the mail and having folks knock on our doors. And many of us, may feel overwhelmed or confused by some of these offers and not know what to do, whether to change our suppliers or our generators. We don't know, who's going to give us the best kilowatt hour price. Some of our consumers may be very savvy at shopping around and finding the best buy energy-wise or the greenest buy for their energy dollars. But for many of our population, I think this will be a great help to help cut through all of that confusion so that we don't each have to make our own choice, but we can make a group decision for what we all think is best to help get the lowest energy dollars possible. And working together, we can make it better and less confusing for everyone.
And with that, I'll take questions if you guys have questions.
When we talked before, Roger, we talked a little bit about the kind of the goal to spread some of these goals that you list here over a several-year time span, focusing first on the energy costs and then some of the other stuff later. So this RFP, what type of time span does it cover, and how does it address those goals over that time?
Well, we've asked respondents to come back with either a 2-year or a 3-year proposal. And there are factors in terms of projecting what the electric market is going to do that might lead one respondent to limit it to a 2-year versus a 3-year. But that's for them to sort out. And we've really invited a progression of steps, but we're inviting them to propose local generation at a small level initially and build that up, and energy efficiency at an introductory level and build that up. One of the things we've invited them to do under the energy efficiency component is propose what we would consider an energy coach, which would be someone who would serve members of the community, helping them identify the low-hanging fruit that Gary was speaking about, and actually walking them through the process of taking the steps, not just giving them the information, but helping them actually utilize some of the programs that are already out there.
If I could jump in on part of that, I mean, there are programs for low-income folks, HWAP, Home Weatherization Assistance Program, a federal program, and state programs. But there's this donut hole or gap of people who are not low-income enough, but still don't have the means to engage in extra insulation and new windows and a bunch of other things, new appliances, new furnace or a furnace upgrade or things like that. So I think that's going to be part of the challenge of this, that there are programs through community action agencies that cover the low-income population to help with energy conservation. But just beyond that as a population that there really aren't any services for right now. And if the companies through the RFP can identify how they're going to hit that population, that would be a big help in this whole program. Because if you're affluent enough to do this stuff on your own, that's not a concern. But there's kind of that gap right in the middle right now that is challenged to do some of this stuff.
I think another challenging aspect is the rentals. Like Athens City, what you got 75% of the housing stock is rental, and oftentimes the tenants pay the electric bill, but the upgrades to the buildings are, obviously funded by the landlord. So there's a big disconnect there, and maybe this could help make more of that happen as well.
Another thing we talked about is how this could spur economic development and local investment in energy generation infrastructure. Could you talk about what that infrastructure looks like now and where you see it going under what you're requesting here?
You want to pick that up?
Well, I mean, the Athens County Economic Development Council, we have 4 target industries, and one of them is sustainable energy. And like the mayor had mentioned, we have, several companies that are involved in that kind of business. I'd say like right now, I don't actually know the real numbers about how many households have that kind of technology, but the potential, for our area, because solar is the best fit, I think, as far as renewables go. I think we have a huge growth potential. Again, it gets back to that keeping our energy dollars local, but the energy efficiency component as well. If we're buying those things from local suppliers, we're having HVAC people upgrading, geothermal, or all those kind of things. Those are going to produce local jobs right here in our community. So,
I guess if you're asking us a systematized infrastructure in place, not really. I mean, again, the supply and the transmission and distribution is pretty much what AEP does. The generation, of course, is pretty modular right now. I mean, we have solar panels at the community center. There are various businesses that have them. But again, every rooftop is potential. The question is that where we want to go? Is that the low-hanging fruit that's discussed? I mean, if you look at weatherization, that's always an easy one to do too, because that's probably more of a need for all the housing stock we have in the city and in the county. How to gauge that and how to address that, of course, is different from house to house. But the fact is, if we can get a localized program that looks at the local issues versus something coming out of Cleveland or Cincinnati or something like that, their needs and their goals are probably slightly different. So that's why we're trying to build it ourselves here. So we have that local touch to it, and we have the plug into the local resources. The hope is in time that we do create our own energy, localized, and the industry that supports it. It builds resiliency. It also builds the contact where you know what's going on. I don't know what the term would be in terms of like a local war for energy, but at the same time, that's really where we want to look towards, because that's how we'll grow our jobs here too, as well as supply the electricity that people need.
The other piece of that, in addition to facilitating more rooftop installations, is that there are real possibilities for solar gardens or even larger installations called solar farms. And if we get some respondents who are engaged in that kind of development, probably partnering with a local firm, we would see a real boom locally in terms of employment from that, both in the construction, and then if it were financed so that a substantial portion of it was owned by local residents, then all those energy dollars for every kilowatt hour, instead of flowing out of the community, would remain in the community. And the amount of electricity consumed just in Athens County is tens of millions of dollars. And if some of that stays in the county and circulates, it's really going to be a boost to our economic development and our economy.
And again, all this is baby steps.
Right.
We're starting right here. So,
Right.
Other questions?
And it's a multi-year. Yeah,
Yes.
well, Roger actually anticipated my next question there. But earlier, you also mentioned you put out a sample RFP to get feedback.
Mhm.
Who did you gather feedback from?
There were 3 potential suppliers that gave us substantial feedback. One was AEP Ohio, or AEP Energy, which is the
Supply side.
the supply side of AEP. And another is called Western Reserve Electric from up in the Cleveland area, and I don't recall the third one, but we had about a dozen potential suppliers who obviously went through the draft RFPs and thoughtfully responded to it. 3 really in great depth. So we know that some of the potential suppliers are paying attention to this and will be responding.
I believe we also got some feedback from NOPEC, the larger aggregation system that's up in the northeast Ohio area. I mean, they've got a structure they put together. We modeled it after there, so they really didn't have to give us too much advice since we took a lot of their structure and concepts out there. But
And we're also in close contact with the Cleveland and Cincinnati aggregation governmental aggregators who have been doing this for a few years, and so they're able to give us good feedback on what we're doing, how we're approaching this.
Obviously, Amesville's on board now. It says here Bookdale, Jacksonville, Trimble will be placing it on the ballot in November. Are you continuing to engage other political subdivisions out in the county to get that into the larger?
We didn't even engage them, they just
Oh, really?
did that on their own.
Okay.
But what we're going to be moving to a council of governments is the next step for us, because it's just going to make it easier for dealing with the PUCO, and the potential, like the mayor mentioned, is modeled after NOPEC, which is the largest aggregation group in the country. If you look at the PUCO map of the state of Ohio, this part of the state, the poorest part of the state, really hasn't taken advantage of this, and that's why SOPEC is really important for this whole region. And for us to do that, we have to go to the Council of Governments
structure.
Yeah.
And again, this is the point. I mean, right now you can get your supply from a retailer cheaper in many cases than what they, without, opting one way or the other. But the buying power potential of, we got 64,000 people in the county, buying potential of that is much different than you as an individual going to one of the suppliers and say, make me a deal.
Right.
So I expect a much better price when we are aggregated in general. And that's it, organization counts at one point. Council of Governments will be the next place to go, because we do expect growth as the ballots go through. And again, we haven't solicited, but the next thing will be after we get it up and running is to start talking to other entities, saying you want to be a part of it.
Have you had any discussions with Nelson yet?
Not yet. No, we're kind of trying to get launch here, and see what we have to work with, and then, like the mayor said, I think then we'll be in a better position to start, maybe evangelizing a bit.
If they decide to move forward, that's that they can do on their own. Right now, we're focusing on getting our system up and running right now. I mean, that's the eyes on the prize type thing.
They're the next big fish in Athens County.
Can you just explain in a little more detail what the advantages to going to the Council of Governments, what it allows you to do?
I think the main reason is that every time we were to add a municipality, we'd have to resubmit paperwork to the PUCO, which is a cumbersome process. So and NOPEC, they've set themselves up where they have, they're in multi-counties and
Cities, townships.
Yeah, so it's just going to be a more streamlined, efficient way for us to operate.
If I could just jump in, the bottom line is that going outside of Athens County will allow you to bring in other villages and local governments outside of the county.
So it's best to have structure.
Without amending the certification constantly.
I see the RFPs available online. Did you set, I haven't had a chance to look at it, have you set specific kilowatt per hour requests in it, or are you just kind of throw the blanket out there and see what they come up with? Okay.
An open slate.
Okay.
Are you going to set up the Council of Governments before Amesville comes in, for example?
I don't think so. I think we can work within Athens County.
Just primarily when you get to the point where you want to expand outside of Athens County.
Yes.
And with having a council of governments, essentially we can actually have a system there that doesn't require, once we add more entities on, you'll get different levels of engagement. So a council of government will actually set that threshold for engagement. In other words, you have a vote, you have a representative or something like that. And we haven't really sat down and discussed it too much. We're looking at NOPEC as their system, which is very extensive. I mean, they're what, 140 entities, so that's a different animal than what we're looking at right now here. But the fact is that, you know, every townships would be different. Townships are included. Villages have different levels of expertise and time that they can spend doing the shopping as well, so, or even looking at the product we end up with. And again, we'll have a series, you know, by law we have to give everybody a chance to opt out. By law, everybody has an opportunity and time to do that. You knowing us, will probably go the extra step and try getting out there with some PR, and if not, public meetings, say this is what's going on, this is how it goes, and get the information out there as much as possible. You know, this is how we roll in Athens, and inclusive as possible. So, you know, you'll hear more before we get to the Council of Government stage for sure, but also before we get anything, the next steps on this.
Does Ames have to do anything like pass additional legislation or something like that in order to actually join, or I don't know what the process is?
Not that I'm aware of.
Probably not. The vote was probably it.
We use the same language as was in the ballot measures for the county.
I didn't know approval by the voters, that though could allow you to do it on your own though, right? Or join the council. So how's that decision made, whether to do it alone or to join the council?
From my point of view, I probably will bring it to council for their stamp of approval, but that's, you know, again, we are entering into a contract, so I would assume I bet it with them, and that'd be a vote on the council side. But that's just me.
There are some numbers in the RFP, I don't remember specifically what they are, but about numbers of customers and numbers of small businesses. What are those numbers? Are those just Athens and the unincorporated areas of the county?
Yes, we
Minus
looked at
Buckeye Rural Electric,
Mhm.
minus PIP? Yeah, okay.
Mhm. And we'll get more exact figures from AEP quite soon, but we didn't have those in advance of this.
Those are customer numbers as opposed to population numbers?
They're meters,
Meters.
yeah.
And like, speaking of your whole topic of this energy infrastructure, like, I think what we've been engaging in is like helping us build our like intellectual capital for this topic, you know, like we're being proactive about our energy choices, and you know, energy just, it touches everything that we're doing. And if we don't engage, you know, in this process, I think we're going to be more of a price taker instead of a price maker, which I think this is what we're trying to do by being proactive and you know, building our local capacity. Like, we don't have a real community-wide energy plan right now. All this stuff that we're working on with this aggregation and with the energy efficiency competition, that's helping us kind of lay the groundwork for coming up with an energy plan.
The other piece of that is that nationally, the energy industry, particularly the electrical part of it, is going through a massive transformation. It's moving much more towards distributed generation of power, partly because of the aging grid, and if we are just distributed in our production, then that adds resilience and strength to the grid. And there are other economic factors driving that. And in part, what we are doing here is locally joining in that transformation so that we're active partners in it rather than it being something that happens to us.
Other questions?
How much of a savings would people get under this model? Do you have any sort of estimates about?
Until we get offers from suppliers, it's really hard to say. And the market from which they're buying their power is going through considerable changes. Part of their expertise is engaging and anticipating what those changes are and making us a reasonable offer. They're in a much better position to do that, which is part of the reason why we do this whole request for proposals process. So we could look at historical examples of what Cincinnati or Cleveland has realized, but even a year ago, the market conditions were considerably different than they are now. So for us to answer responsibly, we have to wait until we have some offers in hand.
So it would work would be that people could opt to join the aggregated pool, sort of, instead of I get my electricity from AEP, but now I'm joining, and they as an individual they offer me you can buy, I get all the mailers, the junk mail, Dominion Energy, this, that, and the other. But I would join sort of the Athens County aggregated group.
Because the ballot measures were passed both in Athens City and Athens County and now Amesville, every customer, AEP customer in those arenas is in the program unless you opt out. Opting out will be very easy. It'll just be a check mark on a postcard that we'll provide and you send it in. But it is an opt-out program where you're automatically in.
Probably one of the things to look at is go to the PUCO. They have a series of tutorials on electrical aggregation as well as gas aggregation. And again, you as an individual can actually purchase, go to a retailer, as you say, Dominion, et cetera, that you mentioned. But you're operating as one household, one meter. The concept here is then you have aggregation with what they call opt-in, where we would set up a structure and everybody would have to write and say we wanted to be part of it. But putting on the ballot last November, we structured so it's an opt-out, so you actually have to do something to get out of it. The thing there is, again, by law, we have to inform you what the pricing will end up with. My expectation is whatever, if you go to the apples to apples of the PUCO, I suspect, and do a comparison of what you're being paying now for the energy and what they're offering, I'd have to say probably whatever we could find was probably going to be less than you as an individual shopping. And again, those numbers are fluxing all the time. They're changing as the cost of energy goes up and down, whether through coal, wind power, or solar, or oil and gas. So these things are in flux, but the idea is to get this number, start this up this way, and then start the negotiation. Well, once the RFP is put together and we get responses, then the next thing is to have that negotiation at that level. That's why we've got consultants here. That's why we're working together at it. Other questions?
I didn't see anything in the RFP that would ask the companies to submit anything that would allow customers to be on a budget payment plan. Is there a decision made not to do that, or?
I thought that fell out.
No, that's precluded by the law that set up aggregation at the state level.
There are certain exclusions from the aggregation. One is the rural districts, I think, that you were part of, right?
The rural electrical cooperatives.
Yeah. And the
So
other one
PIP is an exclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you for coming.